Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone. This is Learning Life Skills Together weekly Zoom meeting number 76. And I'm here today with Katy Morton, who is the Director of Advocacy for PMHCC-FTAC. And we'll hear more about that later. And I also have with me Lexie Taylor, who is the Youth and Advocacy Manager at NAMI in Philadelphia. And we'll hear more about that too. But first, we're going to talk about communication and advocacy. And one of the things that we really need to do sort of before we get involved in significant communication is to know what's up with us and to know where we're coming from. So I'm going to invite all of us to get in touch with how we are right now. And you can do that just by sitting where you are and paying attention to how it feels in your body. Some people find that they can get more in touch with themselves if they close their eyes. And so if it's safe for you to do that where you are, for instance, if you're driving a car, please don't do this. So just doing what you need to get in touch with how it is for you in your body right now. Maybe you notice what you're feeling about your sitting or standing or lying down that's going on right now. Feeling what it's like where you're touching down. So it may be your feet, maybe your feet and your buttocks and thighs, your back. Noticing where your arms are. Are they hanging down? Are they touching somewhere? Are they resting? And so this is a question that we can ask ourselves, If I'm just here, just in this posture, and my body is responding to gravity, is there a lot of work I need to be doing right now? Or could I just settle in? Just noticing how it is for you and the possibility of settling in. Maybe you notice your breathing. So not doing anything special, just noticing your breath. And one thing that I will suggest is that sometimes when we breathe in, we feel that we're getting a little bit tighter and maybe rising up a little bit. And when we breathe out, we get a little looser and we settle. So maybe you could pay more attention to the settling than to the rising up. Let's see what that does. See how that is. Letting your mind be involved in that. And of course, thoughts will show up. Emotions may even show up, and you can notice them. You don't have to do anything about them. You just notice them. If it's an emotion, you could even name it silently to yourself. So noticing how your body is, noticing what thinking is like Is it coming at you fast? Is it swirling around again and again, just returning? Or is it kind of clear and open? Noticing the emotional area. What's it like? And so now you have maybe some little sense of how you are right now. Maybe you could take a deeper breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Maybe you could try that again. And one more time. And maybe your eyes have been closed. If that's true, you could open them when you're ready. And so maybe something happened in that. So I'm going to ask Katy and Lexie what they noticed, how it is with them right now. So, so how is it?
I can go first. It was really nice. I do a lot of yoga, less now that since I have a baby, but I used to do yoga all the time, and this is sort of a similar way to how we settle into practice for yoga. And I personally have been in meetings since 8 a.m. this morning back to back. So that
Mm,
calm, quiet moment was very nice to recenter.
all right. So maybe you're ready.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Lexi, how about you?
Yeah, I think that was much needed. It's, mid-afternoon after lunch, been doing meetings, emails all day. Nice to just take a breath and chill, not think about the to-do list I have. Yeah, it was refreshing.
All right. So here we are, refreshed or semi-refreshed, however far we got on that. Maybe we could use a little more. But,
That'll just turn
there,
into a nap. So
there you
yeah,
go. There you go.
seriously.
Okay. So, we're getting in touch. We're doing this thing that we need to do before we communicate. And so what I'd like to start with is what it is that you were having all those meetings about, what it is that you guys do. So maybe you could each talk a little bit about this concept of advocacy, which is in both of your titles.
Lex, you go first.
Yeah, sure. So, people who work in the nonprofit world realize more often than not you wear a bunch of hats. So I'm actually the youth and advocacy manager at NAMI Philadelphia. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are actually the country's largest grassroots mental health organization. So we have a national organization as well as state organizations, and I'm at our local affiliate here in Philly. So I'm at NAMI Philadelphia. We provide free resources, peer support, care, and advocacy for folks living with a mental health condition or anyone that has a loved one that has a mental health condition. So, what do I do? So, I lead again our youth, young adult, and advocacy initiatives at our affiliate. Um, some of the youth stuff I lead includes our mentor program. We also have NAMI on campus clubs for high schools and local colleges and universities. We do educational programming for adults as well as for youth. We also we have a young professionals group that I lead too. And then I think what we're here to talk about most today is have an advocacy initiative. It's called PBAT, and that's in collaboration with Katie's organization. And so really we put our heads together to create an advocacy space in Philadelphia for the behavioral health community. And I'm sure we'll get more into what we do as PBAT, but I'm gonna hand it over to Katie to talk more about her work too.
Okay.
Sure. So I'll also throw out there because we use a lot of acronyms in behavioral health. PBAT is the Philadelphia Behavioral Health Advocacy Task Force. So big mouthful. That's why we just call it PBAT. but that's that. But yes, as Lexi said, we work together in collaboration on that effort, which is wonderful. I also just transitioned into my role as Director of Advocacy in May, so very new to that this exact position. But I've been doing behavioral health advocacy for a long time. I work at PMHCC-FTAC, another mouthful. PMHCC is a large mental health nonprofit in Philadelphia that works very closely with DBHIDS, which is the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services, um, and several others. But those are the acronyms we'll put out there. But our arm that I work at called FTAC is the Family Training and Advocacy Center. That's what that
Ah,
stands for. It was formed many, many moons ago before I existed. And it was formed because consumers and their families felt like they didn't have a voice in the behavioral health space. And there was a disconnect between the people who were making programs, running programs, providing services, and those that were utilizing those services. So FTAC was born. It actually was in direct collaboration with NAMI Philly many, many moons ago before Lexi and my time.
hmm,
Um, but like I said, I'm pretty new to this position. I was the director of forensic system solutions for about 2 years. That was doing specifically forensic advocacy, education, and training. Forensics being the intersection between the criminal legal system and behavioral health, of which there is a lot. Um, but
hmm.
in my current role, I run a lot of different advocacy groups focused around workforce, forensics, family, and we always, always try to bring the family perspective into everything that we do. I track legislation. We do meetings with legislators to provide education and advocacy. We'll say this multiple times probably through this conversation, but we're not lobbyists. We're non-lobbying organizations, which is important.
Right.
We are advocates and we are educators and we are connectors. So that's what I do. That's me.
Right. So let's take a look at, I mean, you guys are really up there in the high levels and tracking legislation and thinking about youth mental health at this really high level. Could you just give us a little bit of what's going on right now? Just to sort of tune us in, because I'm really on the family side with you, so, we don't have to go too far into it, but I'd really like to know what's happening. What are people thinking about? What are the hot things?
Um,
I'd
I mean,
say,
go
oh,
ahead, Lexi. No, you go,
I'll go
Lexi.
ahead. Yeah. I'd say recently, like in recent years, mental health has become such a buzzword lately. And that's
Yeah.
awesome. It's great that there's so much more attention to it. Um, and I think there is a good majority of youth that are recognizing that and they're thinking about their mental health, thinking about things like that. But I also think there's still such a stigma, and that's one of the biggest things that we try to
Mhm.
combat at NAMI and NAMI Philly, of course, is the stigma around mental health. I mean, that's why we do educational programming. But we notice even when we work with youth, like directly, like in the field per se, there is still such a stigma whenever it comes to mental health. And I think it does depend on the youth you're talking to. And there's so many different factors. It can be upbringing, it can be the geographic area that they're living in. I think gender is also something that
Mhm.
can affect that.
Yeah.
Um, but
Can,
just
can,
from my own
can
experience,
you talk about that a little bit?
yeah, from my experience, what I've noticed is that the youth that we work with, it's girls that are more likely to talk about their mental health than the teenage boys that we work with in the field.
Hmm.
So I think that just that has so many more undertones of, just masculinity and gender standards, things like that. And again, it goes with the stigma, but everyone has mental health across
Yeah.
gendered lines. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's interesting. That's interesting to keep in mind. It really is, as to who needs one kind of approach and who needs another, I guess, right? In
Yeah.
terms of communicating. Yeah.
And
Yeah, and again, that's just in my experience, so it can be different in different areas, but where I've worked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would say I've seen that too. Prior to my roles, sort of back in the macro practice, I should have said this too. I'm a social worker, so I have both my degrees are in social work. Um, I worked as a clinician with kids and families involved in the criminal legal system. So I would agree with what Lexie saw, or Lexie has seen. I also have seen that in my work. Again, it's not the end all and be all of everything, but that's sort of what I've
Right.
seen
Yeah.
as well. And I wanted to, not to take us off topic, I just wanted to throw out there something that sort of folks might want to look more into around the policy space and advocacy space here. There's a lot of conversation and certainly a hot buzzword in Harrisburg where we do a lot of work around state things that are happening,
Hmm.
is student mental health and school mental health. And that's
Mm.
something
Hmm.
that is a huge, like Lexie's buzzword. It's a huge buzzword right now in Harrisburg. A lot of legislators have a lot of interest around that. There's a lot of different bills that were introduced last session that are being reintroduced this session. There's always funding that goes into that, but it's interesting to sort of dig into what that looks like, where that money's going, what services are available and things like that.
Yeah. And so this is something that the parents and carers that we're talking to might want to tune in on and help advocate.
Yes. Yeah.
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 We say that all the time in the work that we do. And I say it, I think I say it probably in every meeting I've ever been in since I took over my initial role here. Um, Legislators and staffers are not experts on all of this stuff. Some may know more than others, but this is not, they have to be experts on so many different things, right? A legislator has to know about a million
Yeah.
things. The experts on these topics are the kids that are utilizing the services or experiencing the mental health crises and behavioral things, and the parents who are trying to get these services for these kids and who are,
Hmm.
living and working with the kids and who also may have their own mental health stuff going on. So it's so, so important, just to add more things onto people's already busy plates. It's so important that legislators and staffers and policymakers at all levels hear from family members and teenagers and kids themselves because they're really the experts in this area.
Yeah. And it's important that they hear stories and that they hear how it really plays out
Hmm.
in the world and in the school and in the family. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the stuff that turns politicians on.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's how they think. So
Hmm.
very cool. Okay, so we've got that level. Now I want to sort of say you guys know how to advocate, right? You know how to do sort of the education part of advocacy, and you know how to do the approach. And so I think some of those things are skills that are transferable, one from an advocate to a parent to even a teen with some sophistication, you know. So I think if we started to move into what are those skills that would be really helpful for us. So, we're working with those four skills, right? And we started all the way back with paying attention. How am I? And then what if I were calmer? What could I
Hmm.
maybe accomplish? And so, we're all the way up to communicating effectively when we're doing those things. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think something we talk a lot about. We do an advocacy crash course as part of our PBAT group. I believe you actually were able to come to that, and we presented it
mhm.
at the
Yeah,
Keystone Conference. One of the things we talk about there that I think is transferable across all levels of advocacy, that's self, individual, family, organizational, legislative, and policy, is we always say to people, it's completely understandable and makes total sense to be really passionate about something. And you can feel angry about something, right? You can feel angry that, I as a social worker would be angry that my kid that I was working with and his family couldn't get services. And that would make me really mad. Well, how do I turn that into something that is really effective that
yeah,
somebody will listen to? So we always suggest to people, you can be really mad. You can be really frustrated. It's understandable. Turn that into a passion that is going to be able to be heard from multiple people and multiple groups. We always suggest that people write their thoughts out or, voice memo them, whatever you're comfortable doing, and then
Yeah.
go back to them. Sit for a little bit with it and go back to them. Take care of yourself, go back, listen to it, read it, and say, okay, what part of this is me being angry and what part is really what I need to communicate? Because it's in
Yeah.
there. It just might be
Yeah.
buried in the emotions, right? So we always talk about that when we talk to folks. And I think that's a really important skill. And a really important skill that we teach too is relationship building, because when you meet with, whether that be a legislator, a staffer, somebody from an organization, a family doctor, a psychiatrist, you build that relationship and that rapport with them. And that takes time. And that's a skill that you have to be able to be really an effective advocate. Um, I know a lot of people get frustrated if they talk to
Hmm.
a legislator once or they send an email and they don't hear anything back. You got to build that relationship, right? That's so important. And I think we do that interpersonally, and we can use that when we're advocating.
Yeah. Okay. I mean that's fabulous advice. Um, uh, sort of to put it away for a minute. And as you said, take care of yourself. I mean, that is our sort of coming back into balance. And then looking from that balanced viewpoint. What do I really need to say here? I,
Hmm.
I kind of I see a lot of this as knowing what you need because many people and you probably notice this in your everyday life and in your everyday family life too, is that people are running around having an emotion about something, getting angry about it, but they don't actually know what they need or what they want to have come out of it. And so I sort of feel like that, like taking that step back and figuring out what do I need here? What want is not being fulfilled
Yeah.
is a key to it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And a
So
really, oh, I'm sorry. It's a really
no, go
effective
ahead.
way. It's an effective way to tell your story too, Again, like I said, it's there. It's just buried sometimes in, obscenities and other things that we might write down when
Yeah,
we're
that
angry.
you
Mhm.
So,
really, yeah, don't
yeah, so you
say.
pull that stuff out.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really fabulous. And you know, one of the things that we talk about in this module on effective communication is that when you have that big head of steam, is to look underneath it and see if there might be a different emotion there
Mhm.
too. Because we use anger to cover things, to cover up the emotions we really don't want. Like nobody really wants to be angry, but it's a whole heck of a lot easier than being sad, you know? And so often we're sad because we're not getting what we want, and it really doesn't look like we're going to.
Mhm.
So when we can talk about that, I mean, isn't that part of how you sort of advocate? Is the story of that the emotion is not just I want this and I want it now.
Mhm.
It's something else entirely. Maybe Lexi, maybe you can talk about that because you're actually doing the advocacy with the groups and with people. So what does that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think honestly what Katie said, whenever it comes to talking to a legislator, that can be applied in real life. In general, like writing down
Mm.
what you want to say before you say it. Um, but yeah, that's so true. I think a lot of times those more stronger, blatant emotions like anger can be cover-ups for different emotions that we have going on. Um, and again, I think you mentioned earlier, it's better to respond than react and think about your
Mm.
emotions before you just react. Think about how the other person might respond to your response. And I think a lot of times we have to know ourselves and be in touch with our own mental health, our own emotions before we can learn to effectively communicate.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely required.
Hmm.
So, or things can go haywire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about, our parents and carers and the kinds of situations that they might be in advocating for their child at,
Mhm.
those very basic levels, like, Katie, we're talking about mental health in schools, so at that kind of level, and then like inside the family too.
Mhm.
Like how does that work? So I'm hoping maybe, this is all nested and what you guys know about talking to legislators transfers down to talking to mom and dad, brother, sister, whatever it is, so
So I was a family therapist for a while, like I said, and I would say uh, I always would talk about this in family therapy sessions. Like there's always an emotion behind a behavior, right? There's always a need that somebody is trying to have met.
mm,
With a behavior, with an action, with something that they say. There's always like a reason behind it, right? And I think if you can focus, and I always used to talk about this with families, and I think it sort of applies with legislators, with organizational people, with whoever in your life. I think if you can remember that that person is also trying to get their needs met, it sort of brings that back around for you. So I know it can be really easy in situations, whether, and I have my own family too. So even in situations with my own family, at work, etc., you can be like, well, why is this person doing this thing to me? They're
mm,
they're not necessarily doing it to you. It's that reframe of like, well, I'm feeling this way because I need my need to be met and it's not being met. They're reacting because
Mm.
they also need their need met and it's not being met. So seeing that perspective, and I think that can help, especially in legislative advocacy as well as on down, because there's different political parties. So you can look at it and be like, oh, well, they're just doing this because they're on this side of the political thing. Yeah, but also they may be looking to get their needs met in a different way than what you are. It doesn't, it's not necessarily they're coming at you, but looking at it in that way, I think can be helpful.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it's great. Lexi, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Just thinking about my own relationships, honestly, and
Yeah.
how to communicate effectively. Yeah, I think that's been such a learning curve for me, especially. I think we all learn how to communicate originally from our upbringing. Childhood has a lot to do with that.
Hmm.
It does, your parents, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have to relearn how to communicate, especially if your parents or guardians did not effectively communicate growing up. Um, and then even once you learn yourself how to effectively communicate and reteach yourself the proper ways to, you can also try and go back to teach those other family members or loved ones what you've learned, what's more effective to communicate, instead of just like instead of like talking at each other, reacting to each other, actually listening to each other, seeing how we're feeling, putting
Mm,
yourself in the other person's shoes.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So this is all the way back to our attention skill,
Hmm.
to be able to listen without all the other stuff getting in the way. When we're having a conversation, we're having at least two.
Only two? I'm having like 12. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, at minimum two. Could be 10. Yeah, we're having that other conversation with ourselves, with another party. It could be anything like that going on in our heads. And so our listening is not as good as it could be when we're settled in to listen, when we finally give up and say, okay, I will listen to you. That's often what happens, I've noticed in those interpersonal situations, is it goes, and then finally somebody says, all right, tell me what you need,
Hmm.
you know? And the therapist's job is sometimes just to say, what is it that you need? Could you make that statement, you know?
mhm,
And so that paying attention, that getting in touch with ourselves is like the very beginning of this whole thing that you guys are talking about, this whole sophisticated thing of moving somebody in a direction that you'd like to move them. And I love that you're bringing up the what does the other person need, because until we're settled, until we know what's going on with ourselves and why we're responding the way we're responding, it's hard to figure that out.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, it is also possible to ask
Hmm.
if you can listen. But all of that sort of comes together for me in that skill of paying attention. So we think simple, oh, that's the basic skill. The other one's built on it. It's like, no, it's really basic. Yeah, it really matters. So,
It does, and it's really hard, right? Like I think about
oh
how many
boy.
different things are going on in anyone's brain at any given time. I try to refocus back to that point too when I'm meeting with somebody. If I'm like, it feels like they're sort of tuned out, my immediate reaction is to be like, well, they're not listening to me, of course, because that's where my brain goes, because that's what brain is.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think if you can refocus it, which I can't always do in the moment, but usually I try to reflect on this because I'm still growing as an advocate too. But I think if I can refocus and be like, well, maybe they have something going on. And that's why they weren't able to be fully present there. And how do I pivot and make sure that I can still get my point across and let them know, what I was here to provide education on at another point in time if they're not able to really be present in that moment.
yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important to remember that it is an ongoing process, as you're saying, in which we are learning.
Hmm.
That's really what's happening there. We're learning about ourselves, we're learning about the other person. We may or may not be able to take things in. We do things that didn't work out. And so, if we can sort of suspend our judgment on ourselves and on the other people, it's like, okay, well, that didn't work out. What else can we try? Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like if you meet with somebody in person and you're just not feeling it or you feel like they're not paying attention, maybe write them something and be like, maybe that's the way that they're able to hear from you better.
Yeah.
That's another way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we used to transfer that when I was a family therapist too. If people were so frustrated with one another, with themselves, whatever it was, and it just felt like we couldn't get to a point where we were able to hear each other and be present, I would always suggest, okay, can you guys write a letter to each other? Pass it over to the person. We'll reflect on that, next time. Because it's sometimes you have to recognize in the moment, like, this isn't going anywhere, and that's okay. What else
Yeah.
can I do?
Yeah. Yeah. And so communication is an iterative process, as they say. You have to go back through it again and again and again until you finally make that connection. And not being frustrated over it is the hard part, right? It's it,
Hmm.
I think you can allow yourself to be frustrated too, though, right? That's an important piece as well. Like, it's okay to be frustrated. It's just
yeah.
use your frustration. I always say, how do you channel that, right?
What am I
Like,
going to do next? Yes.
right. Like,
Yeah.
take your moment, be frustrated, complain about it to your friend. I do that to Lexie sometimes, and she does that for me. Because we're friends outside of work too. So that's a great spot, right? You can have that venting, and then you can be like, all right, let me regroup, and how can I use that? And it's okay.
Yeah.
I think time and place is
Yes.
also another factor too. Um, I
Hmm.
guess I kind of have like a mini anecdote about this. I felt like I had really mastered communication with my partner, and I was like, yeah, I'm getting really good at this. I can apply this to everyone. And no, everyone communicates differently. I had a
Hmm.
situation with a friend, and we had never really been. The friend wasn't Katie, by the way.
It
But
wasn't, but
yeah, we had just like a little altercation. She did something that just really bothered me, and so I was like, you know what? I've got to tell her how it's making me feel. But we were like in a place where it was on me, not the right time or place, but I let my own anxiety get the best of me to where it was like I couldn't not say anything at this point. And I had said something, confronted the friends, and they were like, no, now you've just rocketed my anxiety. Why would you do that right here? And I was like, well,
Hmm.
I was reaching out to you because of my own anxiety. So I guess that would have just been bad for
Yeah.
either of us, no matter what. But I think time and place is always a thing too. Like, I guess the party was ruined for me, but I didn't have to ruin it for both of us, which I ended up doing.
Mm,
But time and place is definitely a thing as well.
yeah.
And even maybe saying like, yeah, trying to find time to talk to someone, and then if it is your first time, like having a hard conversation with someone, maybe even ask them throughout, like, okay, how are we going to explore this? How do you like want to talk about this? Do you want to write a letter, like Katie was saying, or you want me to just be blunt and put it all out on the table right now? Because yeah, everyone communicates differently. So if you think you've mastered one way of communication, just know that it maybe cannot be applied everywhere, as I learned the hard way.
Yeah, yeah. Again, so that idea that we're always learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's really helpful. That was a very useful anecdote, Lexi, and thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, are we communicating all right? Are you guys getting to say what you need to say?
I am. Thank you for the temperature check, but yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Lexi, you're getting to say what you need to say. Do you have any NAMI stuff you want to put out there that would be useful to our parents and carers?
Definitely. I think when it comes to this kind of thing, especially for families and caregivers, I mean, at the root or the heart of what we do at NAMI is peer support. Um, and I think one of our like strongest communities that we have is our family support group. I'm like, yep, pubbing it, but it's true. Like our family
Yeah.
support group is really great. It meets a few times during the week. It's virtual. The facilitators have been with us for years, and that's a really good place for families and caregivers to go and talk about, what they're dealing with their loved ones, how to communicate, how to deal, and just give themselves some grace and connect with others that are going through similar things. So I'd say that's probably how we help the most at NAMI. It's just providing that safe space for folks.
Yeah, to come in and talk about what's going on, and maybe
Hmm.
if you've got to have one of those conversations, to rehearse it with somebody else. I don't know what's
Yeah.
available. I mean, is it possible to say, I have to say this, and I want to say this. What do you think?
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, yeah,
yeah,
totally. That's what
yeah.
happens all the time. And even if you're scared or like you don't feel comfortable at first, going to a group with people you probably don't know, we have our warm line. People can call
Mm,
anonymously, and it's not a crisis line. So
right,
988
right.
is
Yeah,
the suicide and crisis lifeline. So we have
yes.
a warm line at NAMI Philly, and we have NAMI staff and volunteers that run it. So it's anonymous if you want to call it. You can call that number and it can provide you with supports that you need. And you can just talk to someone about what you're going through, get advice from someone. And these people are trained, they've been doing it for a while too. But I'll find the warm line number. I usually have it right up here with me, but now I can't seem to find it.
Never there when you need it, right?
Well,
I
we
know.
can post it along with the recording of
Oh,
this.
well, I found it
Oh,
right now.
you
So
got
it's
it. Okay, let's
yeah,
go with it.
the NAMI warm line is 1-844 PHL Hope. So that's 1-844 PHL Hope.
Okay,
I feel like
perfect.
I'm on the radio.
Yeah, no, I know. It's great. I mean, and hope. So there we go, is that there is hope in all of the situations that we can manage to communicate our way through, know what we want, and figure out what the other person wants. I think that's really some good stuff there. And I thank you for helping us with this. And I look forward to maybe checking back in on what's happening in the bigger world. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe Harrisburg will get some of those things through and get them going.
Yeah. And I think just the more education we can do with the people that are making the laws and the policies, the better.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's if people have interest in, having a safe space to come and a community to come and talk about these policy things, legislative things, larger issue things, our PBAC group is open to whoever. People can drop in, they can just be on the email list, but it's a resource for folks in a community where we sort of teach some of these skills, and we have that safe space.
All right, and how can people find that?
Lexie.
Yeah, I'd say you can, of course, send me an email. It's ltaylor@namiphilly.org. Or you can check out our website if you just look up NAMI Philadelphia and go to our page where it leads you to local advocacy. So go to the NAMI Philly website, get involved, and then drop down to
There
local
we go.
advocacy. That will show you our PBAT webpage, and it'll have the interest form there. And you can also learn more about what we do at PBAT, and we also have some infographics there, fact sheets, some little quick one-pagers on how to reach out to your legislator. But yeah,
Perfect. There we go. Now we've closed it up. We're ready to say goodbye. So thanks so much. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Take care.
thank you.